It's with pleasure that I introduce our next speaker, Ragavi. And Ragavi is a senior bioinformatics consultant with Zifo. Interesting story, she started with Zifo in Chennai and spent 2 years there, then came over to San Diego to get her master's. And then she went to Gilead, and then she's come back to Zifo. So she's back home with us, thankfully, and she's been with us now for 3 years. She's going to be discussing our learnings from building data pipelines for multi-omics, data ingestion, and integration. So over to you, Ragavi.
So thanks, Margaret, for the intro. And I'm here on behalf of our bioinformatics team. Few years back, bioinformatics used to be all algorithms, pattern matching, and things like that. But now it's so diverse, and it's very hard to put it in a single bucket. My team does a lot of these things, but today I'm going to only touch upon the common and the most interesting problem area in the space, which is its data. Thanks to modern advances, now the scientists can study all the biological processes in detail. They can design new experiments and create tons of internal data. On the other hand, we have all these public databases or data repositories that is maturing in its own way and giving out a lot of these critical information. So whenever we do the bioinformatics study, we try to combine the internal data along with some of the external data to complete its information. So this calls for a different kind of problem, which is called the data ingestion challenge. Because when you take data out of the public database, it's not in the way you want it. So here I have 3 representative case studies from my team that is kind of dealing with the same problem, trying to get the data from a public database in a way they wanted into the system in the format the system wanted. So the first case study is for a in silico target discovery group. So here they wanted to find out any new protein structure from a PDB, and they wanted it to the level of isoforms to the genes. And in the second case study, it's actually for a data platform group. They were developing a data platform, and they wanted to enrich their information with multiple databases. And they wanted to see like how small molecule and large molecule interacts with each other. So they wanted the information to the level of reaction. So you can see Ria in there. And the third one is for a environmental sequencing company. They wanted to combine their internal data with some of the external data for reporting purposes. So in all these 3 cases, the needs are different, the data is different, but the problem is still the same. They wanted it from a public resource into their system, right? So the approach was kind of similar. So you first study the public database. You start with the public database. You understand their data model. You try to see what is that they want from this. Because these databases are designed for a generic purpose, okay? Even if you take the protein data bank, it is designed for its specific purpose, but for a generic audience. But our customer wanted only the structures at the isoform level. So our philosophy is think like a scientist, but build like an engineer. So there are n number of ways to approach it, and we can, look at it in a purely technical way and say like, okay, it's a data ingestion problem. You have a source model, destination model. It's, as simple as merging 2 databases. But we always start with a scientific question. Okay, you want PDB, but why do you want PDB? And what are you going to do with it? Once the data is in the system, who is going to be the end user? So these kind of questions let us figure out the first box. So it's not just the PDB you want. Since you want it at the isoform level, we need the UniProt data to figure out the genes. You need the structures and you need the ligand information. So we need some chemical information in there. And then we also need, you want to match it with your targets. So you need the GWAS information in there. So the scientific question lets us figure out what exactly do you need in your destination system. Even though it started with PDB, we ended up, fishing for multiple information from multiple databases. Excuse me. And then, based on the data, we figure out the technology we needed. In case sometimes, it starts from the scratch. So we have a little bit of flexibility. But in most cases, they already have some existing system. So we try to match it with it. And then we assemble a team of experts to do this, because it's often like a multidisciplinary area where you need like multiple experts working on the same problem. So we have a core team and a floating team of experts to solve this. So basically, the scientific question helps us bring in the right ecosystem to solve this problem. So the expertise is, again, like multiple expertise combines from technology, science, and from the data. So what did we learn from doing these projects? So the first one is stakeholder communication. How you communicate greatly impacts how how successful your project is. Because, there are like multiple owners, starting from your public database, your, whoever owns your platform, whoever is building the AWS pipeline, so there are like multiple owners, and how you are going to communicate, and how you are challenging the requirements that you want. Because sometimes they may ask, okay, why are you like taking a snapshot of the public database? You can just use the API call. This is what they want. So these kind of questions will often come up, and we have to be clear on, okay, this is where we can compromise, and this is where we should not compromise. And the second one is data. So when we try to put it in their destination system, there is some level of integration component there, because you have to like harmonize the IDs, what the destination system is using and such. So you need to have a good domain understanding of how your data is going to be used, so you can make some calls of, okay, this is what I need to be organized, and this can stay separate. And the third one is fair data approach. This is a huge topic by itself, but in this use case, the point I'm trying to make is, irrespective of the organization's data maturity level or their take on fair, we try to do this in the fair way. The reason we do this is, one of the challenges with these public databases is these rely heavily on the funding. And what happens is, sometimes you don't get, sometimes the funding stops, you don't expect it to operate in the same way when you design the system. So we try to make sure, even if your source system changes, the ingestion engine can still operate. For example, here we kind of did the modeling for protein data bank, right? But if we use the FAIR approach, you can reuse the modeling for open targets, for example, with simple tweaks. So this is what we figured out by using FAIR. There are so many advantages, and one of it is scalable, and you can make your thing structured, and it's easy to govern, and so many other advantages. And scalability, I talked a little bit, and then versioning. So this is one interesting issue, because the source system updates in its own timeline, and your destination system will have its backup or versioning in its own timeline. So the versioning and backups will come up as a problem when your scientists go to their website, for example, in Protein Data Bank, and they search for something, they see something, and they don't see it in the report. So the versioning and backup, that sync is very, very important when we do these kind of things. Okay, moving on. So I talked about these individual systems, individual data sources. Nature is nature never operates in silos. Your data can operate in silos, but not the nature. I heard like some startups trying to, combine all the apps, your social media, your banking apps, and all those in a way of predicting your physical and mental health, right? Some of these ideas sound like a Black Mirror episode to me, but that's all for the future. But the first step that we can look at a disease in a holistic way is by taking your database to the next level. To adding a semantic layer, semantic relationships to your data is going to show you, okay, I have this phenotype, I see this disease, what is exactly contributing to my disease, especially since now we can study all these individual elements in detail. And the next step is obviously to combine the results together. So knowledge graph is one of the ways that you can do it. And knowledge graphs, to me personally, I feel should be used by everyone in the biology space. So Zifo, as a naturally curious entity, we wanted to build a knowledge graph as a internal POC by combining all the biological data in one place. Well, that's not our exact goal, because the value for Zifo lies in understanding the process of building the graph, not just with the graph. So we wanted to see, okay, we wanted to come up with our own use case to challenge ourselves with multiple ways to figure out, okay, when a customer comes to us with a knowledge graph building problem, how are we going to approach it? What are the best practices we are going to solve? How many different ways can we build this? So this is where we see the real value, and knowledge graph is more like a side product, byproduct for us. And as always, we started with the scientific question. So we have a liberty here because we are not fixed to a particular disease or modality. But the challenge lies in we need the data, because the data should be public and the data should be accessible. So we started, we brainstormed a few ideas, but we wanted to look at the disease comorbidities as our scientific problem. So we picked type 2 diabetes and coronary heart disease for it. And based on the disease we picked, we then decided on the data, technology, the team we need, so bringing up the right ecosystem. And we wanted to, again, use the databases that we have not come across in the past. So something like Drug Bank, OMIM, Mondo. These might sound like new to some of you, but these are widely used in today's world. So again, there are multiple ways to build a knowledge graph. Neo4j, one of the graph databases you can build, is actually allowing you to upload your file directly into the Neo4j using a UI, and you can build your own graph. But I'm sure you all know by now that's not going to work for our organization. So there are multiple steps involved in building a graph, and each step comes with its own set of advantages and challenges. I'm going to highlight just this layer where I talk about the relational database and the graph database layer here. So one thing, one major learning that we had in building this is when you build a graph, the real advantage of the graph is in how easy you can query this, right, compared to a relational DB. Because if you are for example, in this case, disease comorbidities, if you have to do the same query using SQL, it's, you can only imagine how many inner joins, how many subqueries you need to get to this level. So to make use of that advantage, the graph, if you make it tailor-made to your use case, then your graph querying is very, very efficient and gives out the answer you are expecting. So, but that also means you are losing a lot of data at your graph layer. You are only like keeping the critical information in the graph layer. So having a relational database to support it is going to, help you avoid all these data loss, and you can have all your data governance factors, data provenance, versioning, backups, all those controlled at the relational database level, and then you can build multiple graph databases tailored to your use case on top of your relational database. So that way, you can model your graph better, and you can query your graph better, and you can make it focus to a particular group, right? For example, your preclinical team is going to have a different kind of questions than your manufacturing team. But if you have a central data repository, you can build like multiple graphs, like what I like to call as graph islands, that can help them query within these areas that they work with. So I couldn't actually demo my database here, but here you can see like how our graph looks like. So you can see I'm just like saying, okay, give me any disease that has coronary and diabetes in its name, and give me all the common genes. So the beauty here is the genes are not even directly linked to the disease here. The genes are linked through the variants. Okay, I have these variants that are linked to a disease, and I know like the variants come from a particular gene. So here it basically gives me the list of common genes that are, common between these coronary and diabetes diseases. So this is basically extending the nodes I have for a particular gene. So this is showing the pathways, this is showing the diseases, and all those extra information we can get for the gene. So the other thing is this query is also filtered, having like based on the evidence. If the number of evidence is less than 3, I'm not interested in that gene link. Okay, it should be at least referred by 3 different studies, then I want to see that gene. So that is the filter we have here. This is again like a very, very small set of data we trained our graph with, but if you imagine what will happen if the major advantage we have here is when you have an outlier, when you do your analysis and you have an outlier, then these kind of things will give out, okay, this is why this patient is outlier, this is why this variant is an outlier, or something like that. So here I changed my query for obesity and diabetes, from coronary heart disease to diabetes, and this is showing all the other genes that are linked between obesity and diabetes. And you can see like, even for diabetes and obesity, there are different names scientists like to use, but this also shows like giving the big picture view of, okay, it doesn't care whether it is diabetes mellitus or diabetes retinopathy. These are like very specific terms. So you can have the big picture view of a disease, and you can, dive down deeper as much as you want. So, yeah, this is again extending that. Yep, that's all I have, and I think I covered the most part of the knowledge graph. So basically, I would like to conclude by saying, if you have knowledge graph in your roadmap, start by thinking of few use cases and how you want to build that knowledge graph. So the technology comes after, your scientific question takes the precedence in this kind of projects. And thank you. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
Any questions? Can you repeat the question, Ragavi?
Okay, so how long does it take to figure out the scientific question, right? So, it mostly depends on the organization's mission or the pipelines, existing pipelines they have. In most cases, it's very hard to nail down to the specific use case. So what at least like having a rough idea of this is what I want to see. Let's say like even if you put it into like a broader bucket of, okay, I want to learn about rare diseases, right? Or I want to like see how the preclinical outcomes match with clinical outcomes, right? Even that level of hypothesis is enough to build a knowledge graph to come up with the problem and the data model. Any other questions?
The questions? Okay, thank you, Ragavi.
Thank you.